Hi, I'm Joe Catanzariti, the Chair of the College of Law and recently retired Vice President of the Fair Work Commission.
And we're going to talk today about the role of the Chair in recruiting the CEO. Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. My name is Mark Banicevich, and as you just heard today, I had the absolute pleasure again of spending more time with Joseph Catanzariti. Joe, thank you very much for your time. I'm actually going to start with a question off the wall. Can you tell us about your PIN?
Oh, yes, I'm delighted that in 2016 I was made a member of the Order of Australia for my services to legal education, industrial relations and the legal law societies.
On top of all of your work on boards and chairing various organisations and so forth. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for I really appreciate your time today. We're going to talk about the role of the CEO in recruiting the chair, but before we do that, we were having a chat earlier on today, and one of the questions that you raised that was really interesting is about the role of a director generally. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts about what is the role of a director?
Yes. There's an assumption that you reach a point in your cycle as an executive where you now say it's time to become a director. Right. I don't agree with that proposition, controversial as it is, because as in the legal profession, a lot of good lawyers make bad judges, right? And I think, what makes a director is a lot more than the experience one gets as being an executive, right? And so it's not for everybody, right? Because first and foremost, the director has to let go of management, right? You are not managing the business, right? You can't, walk the floors, start interrupting all the staff. And of course we have heard those sort of stories, right? You have to respect the line and work through the CEO, and if there's a problem, and if you're only a director, not the chair, of course, really work through the chair, right? Right. So getting an understanding of where it is, right? And you're being asked to be a director for your director potential skill sets, not for your management skill sets, right? So strategy is what you're really talking about, the direction of the company. You have to have a really good understanding of the money, right? Right. And it is important those questions are asked. So my perspective is that, nobody should be a director unless, first of all, they've done an equivalent of the Australian Institute of Company Directors course as a complete, first and foremost. Secondly, I'm a big fan of ongoing training once you are a director, so that you're regularly doing courses and being up to date on things, and and it's not just simply climate change, but there are all sorts of issues that are emerging that you need to be aware of. The psychosocial issues are becoming more prevalent in the director space. It's getting ongoing training. So. And I also think that to be a really good director, you can't be a full-time employee. Right? Now that again might be controversial, but I have obviously sat on boards previously, but they've been very selective when I was in full-time work, right? But as I move out of that space into the wider world, I understand more that if I want to be a director in the wider area, it's impossible to do that if you're a full-time employee, because the conflicts will emerge. You'll be beholden to your decision making will be affected, right? So if you choose to actually go down this path of directorships, you may want to get 3 or 4 directorships and nothing else, right? Because to treat the job seriously, it does take time. It's not the board meetings, right? The board meetings is only a small component of it. A good director must read the board papers from beginning to end, right? If you're a dinosaur and you can't do it on the screen, I don't like on screen, print it out, right? You can't, don't not read them because they're on a screen, right? And there are some people say, it's all too difficult. Well, print the whole lot out, right? And prepare for every board meeting as if you would. If you were a manager in an organisation going to work every day, you're supposed to prepare. So no different to a board meeting.
And it's not just reading, is it? It's digesting. It's spending time to understand what's going on.
And I look. Whilst you can do it from a technology space on the screen, highlighting all the stuff, I like to download the papers in hard copy and colour them all in with different things. Right. So I know the points that I put squiggles or stuff. That's my methodology. So I know the things that I may want to ask about, right? Right? Now, I may not need to ask about them as the discussion occurs in the board meeting, but it's all tagged, right?
Yes.
Right? So it does take time to prepare for that board meeting.
And in an earlier discussion, when we were talking about this earlier today, the other issue that can arise when you're on a board is the crisis, when you've got to drop everything and jump into and devote a whole lot of time. And if you're a full-time employee, you just
and there, we are continually hearing about boards having crisis, right?
Yes.
And obviously, cybersecurity is one of the big issues that can affect any board at any time.
Yes.
And you can't just throw everything back to the chair, right? Because the boards need to be activated in these issues when things happen, right? And it can be, the idea that a board meeting is simply, this day, this month, whatever, is gone, right? I've been involved clearly when you call board meetings outside of cycle because you need to deal with an issue now, right? And then they're not all able to be done by a circular resolution.
No.
They often require a discussion, right?
Yes.
So directors have to understand that there will be occasions when you have to have other meetings, right? Also, real attendance at meetings is important.
Yes.
Once you sign up to be a director, whilst one accepts there can be an illness, that's fine, right? But most boards program the board meetings almost a year in advance.
Yes.
Right? So there's no excuse. You're given the ability to say, look, there is a conflict in that date. Can we shift the dates early, right? But don't sort of, at the 11th hour, knowing many months in advance of that meeting, prefer another interest.
Yes.
Because you're not really doing the job for that board. And when you are on that board, your duty is to that board and that organisation.
That industry, yes. Yeah, Joe, cool, thank you. Moving into the topic of today, around recruiting the CEO, why is the chair's role so critical when the board is recruiting a new CEO?
Well, this is the one area that the chair has to drive, right? And of course, a lot of chairs may never actually get that moment, right? Because of the cycle of chairs. They might be fortunate enough where the CEO is there for 6 or whatever years and they're never having to deal with that issue, and they may not be prepared because, a lot of times, of course, the CEO is not being removed, right? There's a difference between a removal of a CEO when something has occurred where you as chair have formed the view with the board that it's time for this CEO to go.
Yes.
And that's as a crisis management CEO process, and you don't have the luxury of the nice recruitment process, and you've got, a whole journey when you're doing the crisis CEO replacement. So putting that to one side for the moment, talking about the normal recruitment of a CEO. The CEO really is the most important, as I say, the most important decision a chair will make, and putting the process around the recruitment of the new CEO is critical.
Yes.
The organisation as a whole, for the first time, will be looking at the chair, right?
Yes.
Because most of the time, everybody doesn't look at the chair in that sense, but they'll be looking to how that chair has gone about recruiting the replacement of the CEO, right? In a lot of organisations, there will be internal candidates, and one hopes there are internal candidates, but not always, right? But whether an internal candidate or an external candidate succeeds, the chair and the board have to be in a position to justify their decision. And that is where I think a process is really important. A process that is fully transparent. Not everybody will like the outcome,
no.
Right? But you're not there to win friends here. You're there to be able to say, based on the advice the chair would normally, in a recruitment process, align themselves, ask another director or two to be part of the actual process for the interviews down the track, right? So it's not one person's recommendation. Similarly, and I have had this once, I must say, if the subcommittee of the board is not unanimous on the recommendation, the board should be told, right? Right, and it's happened once in my journey over many years, and I wasn't on the subcommittee, fortunately, but the fact that they were not unanimous actually led to a different outcome, because if the subcommittee is not unanimous, then it really becomes a board decision as a whole, and the board should be entitled to ask a whole series of different questions, right? So I say that's rare, but it is a question I ask, right? You know, if I'm not the chair, etc., to ask, well, your subcommittee, is it a unanimous view? It's a legitimate question.
Absolutely.
Right? And you actually, you know, in my view, need to know that, right? Because it gives you a level of comfort if the subcommittee is unanimous.
Yes.
2 or 3 people, you can say, okay, well, they've spent a lot of time doing it. They've worked with the headhunter, and I certainly, at the CEO level, do believe you should have the assistance of externals. Sorry, the chair should have the assistance of externals for the recruitment of the CEO.
Yes.
Right. I don't think it should be done in any other way. Right. And that includes a lot of rigour around it. Right. Now, some may not like this sort of rigour because it will obviously include things like, you know, psychological testing potentially. Right.
Yes.
Behavioural testing as well. You know, a real deep dive to get an understanding of what is coming on board, because a CV doesn't necessarily tell the story.
No.
And for me these days, you know, the ability of the CEO to deal with people in the S space of ESG, right, is critical. And I want to have an idea from the external headhunters as to what they're finding on their journey, right? And there needs to be full and frank discussion from the headhunters to the subcommittee.
Right, absolutely. What are some of the most common mistakes that boards make during CEO succession planning, and how can the chair and the board prevent some of those mistakes?
Ongoing commentary is a danger, right? So once you start the process, you go through the process. And by that I mean, when I'm involved in this sort of process, you don't have an ongoing commentary even with your other directors at this point, right? The committee needs to do its job. The board has said, we want you to go the process and then deliver the messaging right as it goes through, right? It's not an update, right? We have 27 candidates. These are the 2 we're looking at, etc. Because you've got to go through the journey, right? You can give a vanilla update and say the process is going well, we're still going through, but you're not talking about the candidates at this stage. You're not, you know, because until you get to the final period, there's a lot of work to be done, right?
Yes.
Right, and it is a lot of work. I mean, the assumption that and this applies everywhere. I'm not just saying it applies to a large company. Any company, when they have the decision to replace the CEO, either voluntarily or for other reasons, it's a really serious matter.
Yes.
Right, and you're not looking for replacing the same with same anyway. So that's not the test. I mean, you know, some people say, oh, the organisation's going well, we just recruit Sally Smith. You know, no, you're looking at the world of the world at large, right? So, you know, you may end up with an internal candidate, you may not, but you're enabling it to have a proper process, right? I'm all about process, I'd have to say, on this issue, right? And I don't think even the most experienced chair can simply appoint a CEO without a process, because, you know, if it goes wrong, and you won't know if it goes wrong until the person is in the role, because it may not work out, right? You want to be able to say, as the chair and the subcommittee, well, okay, it didn't work out, but not because of the process, right?
Yes.
We had no, you know, I would never approach a CEO recruitment with preferred candidates, right?
No.
Right, because you need to just open it up. Open up, because, you know, particularly in the world today, CEOs do not last forever, right? No. You're talking about maybe 5 to 6 years is the average CEO now, and then and CEOs do move around, right? So it's a different world, right? Same as it is in law firms where partners are able to move. They didn't move in my time. You'd join and you'd stay forever.
Yes.
It's an understanding that you get a maximum result from that CEO. You work collaboratively with them. The relationship between the CEO and the chair is critical, right? So they do have to get on, right?
Yes.
And you hope, you know, they do have communication regularly. I mean, and of course, there's the recruitment and then there's the induction. There are 2 different components to it, right?
Absolutely.
But the recruitment is really critical the justification behind it, and the messaging that follows once the announcement is made, right? So what you wouldn't have is a 2-line announcement saying Bill Smith is a new CEO, because your stakeholders don't understand that, right? Right.
Yes.
So you need to be. It needs to be a glowing statement by the chair, right? And obviously the board will have already met before that statement.
Yes.
The subcommittee will have presented its findings. My own process, which is unusual perhaps if I am a chair, is that I prefer the subcommittee in the interview process, right? My co-directors who will be on a subcommittee to be actively asking the questions.
Yes.
Right? When we get to the last group, right? So in other words, rather than the chair dominating the discussion, right, which is always a risk, right? I think it is quite useful to be saying to the 2 or 3 that are working as a group for the interview process, the final group, that you ask, you feel free. We can have a discussion before it all, right? It's all planned, but I'll ask a couple of questions, but after, right?
Yes.
Right, because I want to get them the candidates engaged with my colleagues, right?
Yeah.
And I just think it's personally I think it's a better process, because then if we do reach the zone of unanimity or dissension, we're able to have a rational basis for it, because we can say, well, my colleagues asked a series of questions. This is where it landed, and if we're unanimous, it's even better to say, well, they actually were actual active participants in the recruitment process, in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you begin that search, how should the chair work with the board to define the organisation's future leadership needs? As you said, you don't recruit a CEO to be a mirror image of the previous CEO. There's a reason for the change. The organisation may be going in a different direction. So, how do you?
If it's just simply the current CEO is announcing they're going, voluntary way, then you just need to make sure that you're clear of what is the job description, right? And the job description is not CEO, right? It's because particularly if we are going to be going, and hopefully always looking externally as well as internally, right? Right. So you want to be able to say because what you're really doing at this stage is selling to the headhunter, not to the candidate first. So you want the headhunter to understand what is our business,
yes,
right? What do we see our vision? What role do we see the CEO playing? And if you're an organisation that has multiple jurisdictions, right, you need to be really transparent in the download, and this is normally done by the chair directly to the headhunter, of what they see the job as being, right, with a lot of detail. I mean, if you're an organisation that realistically, while it says you can do the job anywhere, but it doesn't really mean that, right? Then the headhunter should understand that Auckland is where it's going to be as the head office, and we do expect the candidate to live in Auckland, right? It's going to a lot of granularity, so that then what happens is the headhunter then in writing will come back to you with saying, this is what I understand the brief now means, because this is the qualities you're looking for, right? And you might say things like, because there will be internal candidates as well as external, we're conscious of, potential fallout if anybody, what happens.
Yes.
So how we manage the fallout if there are 10 internal candidates, what happens after that, But we don't want to discourage internal candidates, obviously, or external candidates, to make sure that the scoping and any statement that goes from the headhunters or internally is consistent as to what are we looking for, right? It's not your normal job. I mean, in a normal job I'd say, preferred university degree, preferred this or preferred that. It's not that at all, right? Because we're looking at a totally different thing for the CEO role, right?
Yes.
And acknowledging, as I said earlier, that they're not going to be there probably more than 6 or 8 years, right? Because that's the world that's turning, right? So you want to get maximum value from this candidate, right?
So the more flesh you can get around the understanding of what you need and pass on to the external recruiter, the better they understand what you're looking for. Of course, the more chance you've got of getting the person you're after.
Because they're going, unlike the chair who doesn't have the time, if you like, they're going to be talking to lots of people, right?
Yes.
And they're going to be spending a lot of time, with your brief, as to whether they think they're a candidate that should be recommended to even go to round 2 or round 1, for that matter, right?
How do you then, as a chair and as a board, identify the right recruitment firm to work with and ensure that you get the most value out of that executive search?
That's a very difficult question, right? I mean, quite often it's because you build up relationships with various recruiters over the time, or you've heard good stories about recruiters, right? And you only know whether it's a good experience based on your last experience. And as a lot of chairs may only ever do 1 or 2 recruitments at the CEO level, it may be a hit and miss. But you do know, I think, whether there's a connection between you and the recruiter. In the process that is often followed, and I follow this myself, you might speak to 3 recruiters that do this and get a feel. Can you work with them, right? Based on, I guess, your peculiarities as a chair, right?
Yes.
Right? Because, like in my case, I want a recruiter who keeps me fully advised, right? Right? I don't, because there might be, particularly on the particular organisation you're in, there might be people they haven't sought out that I think of, and so you've got to make sure that the list is broad enough for them to be looking at, they may not be successful, but at least they're looking at a wider list.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a direct connection in the dialogue, and that's clearly why the recruitment firms that recruit at the CEO level do charge substantial sums.
Absolutely.
But you are expecting that connection to happen.
Yeah. You've talked very much about the importance of the process, and we've talked about identifying the recruitment partner to work with, understanding what the needs are for the new CEO, and also then getting a subcommittee of the board that's involved in this recruitment process. You've also mentioned an example where that subcommittee didn't necessarily agree on who the right candidate was, and the importance of bringing the full board into the conversation at that point. How do you manage the differing views of the people in that subcommittee when you've got 2 or 3 really good candidates and they disagree on who the right candidate is? How do you manage that process?
Fortunately, over the last 20 plus years, it's happened only once that I've been involved in it. And I wasn't on the subcommittee, right? But if we were not told that would have been, in my view, unforgivable, right? Right? Because I actually think that, yes, you are giving your powers as a director, right, to a subcommittee, right? And in giving the powers, you want to have openness, honesty, and integrity, right?
Yes.
And you can't get that if they don't tell you that, right? So, as a consequence of that only happening once, I'll always ask that question anyway myself, right? Were you unanimous, right? Right? Because if I had not asked the question myself at that time, sometimes you're not even told that, right? Because the subcommittee believes it's a 2-1 vote or whatever.
That's the answer.
That's the answer, right? And I don't think that is the answer, right?
No.
Because at a very serious level, which is the recruitment of a CEO, a split vote, the dissenting vote might be correct, right? And you can't assume that, in a narrow field, after the final field, that when there is a split vote, we'd like to hear about the split vote.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And because they're just as good an opinion, right? And that's why, from my perspective, I would never say the chair simply is the sole decider of the next CEO. There always to be, even if it's a small subcommittee, depending on the size of the board, at least there's somebody else, right? And you're then told that information.
Yeah.
And then the full board can then embark upon what they want to do. And it may well be that they say, okay, we'd like to see the full list. I've sat on, not on CEO recruitments, but on other recruitments for other agencies where I've asked for the full list, right, when the preferred list has come up, right, for appointments, and invariably names are added as a result of seeing the full list, and sometimes the people that I've added that were there but weren't put through actually get up because there wasn't the forensic detailed analysis that needed to occur.
Right.
So, and as I say, I think this is such an important, at the CEO level, it's so critical, right? Because you just don't know, ultimately whether somebody will make a good CEO anyway. I mean, even the best CV may not work. That's why you've got to try to put as much as you can in the process, right?
Yes.
But as I say, if it's unanimous, it should be okay. And if it doesn't work later, it's not then because of the board has done all it can, right?
Yes.
It got the recruiters, got your subcommittee, they were unanimous, and then it just didn't work, right?
Yeah. Yes. Well, once you've appointed the CEO, what actions can the chair take to ensure the successful implementation of the
I think
candidate?
there are two different methodologies for internal versus external candidates, right? So if you've got an external candidate that wins, then what I don't want in an external candidate myself is an expectation of the board that on day one they know what they're doing, right? I mean, that's just nuts in my view. And the board has to acknowledge that, and there should be a discussion amongst the board. And I call it, if you like, the 100-day rule, if you like, right? Where you sort of say, to the new CEO, look, I don't expect you to do very much in the first 100 days, except to understand our people and the business. Get a full understanding, and then having done what you want to do in the 100 days, you then come to the board and say, well, I've now had a good look at this organisation which I had not worked for before, right? And I want to now present to the board the going forward strategy. So they have ownership, right, of the strategy and discuss it. So that's for an external candidate, right? Because even if the external candidate has the knowledge of your industry, let's say, you're both paper mills or whatever, it doesn't matter because it's the nuances of this organisation. So, 100 days goes very quickly. So let them have 100 days, right? Don't expect, because in that 100 days, they'll turn up a whole lot of things. I mean, an external candidate might realise that, some of their senior staff that they've been, attached to, right? They might say, well, actually, I don't think I can work with this person, right? Because I've had my one-on-ones with them and they're talking about this and I don't see the business going that way. And so they're difficult decisions. But the external candidate is given every opportunity to be free, right? Not thinking that I'm going to deliver in, 2 days, right? The internal candidate's in a different category, right? So there's an internal candidate who is acting, that's in the crisis situation.
Yes.
That's got to be managed separately because sometimes they don't get up, right? And then the internal candidate who's actually appointed in the normal situation, right? Now, I also like to say to them, you can have a bit of luxury because you are now CEO.
It's a broader role.
It's a broader role, right? So you might have been in another role, right? So you need to have a pause, right? And allow yourself, to do and you tell me when you're ready, right? Effectively, rather than the other way around, right?
Yes.
Right. So that it gives that person opportunity because as the CEO, all sorts of things change with an internal candidate, right? So people they were working alongside or subordinates, the dynamics change, right?
Yes.
So it's an interesting thing to watch when you have an internal candidate because some people go, well, I don't want to work with that person. That's fine. I mean, that's your prerogative, right? And other people do want to work with that person, right? But they're making their own adjustment to realise that we were mates, but we can't be the same mates, right? I mean, it's a nuanced thing that happens, right?
Absolutely.
Because suddenly we were both writing reports to the board, right, and to the CEO. Now we're not, right? And you're writing reports to me, right? And so allowing a period of time for that process to work, right?
To settle.
Right.
And as we talked about earlier today, there's also cases where other internal candidates will maybe move on. So you'll have some vacancies to fill up things as well.
Other internal candidates might be disappointed, right? And that's, unfortunate. But, you see that many, many times in organisations where, an internal candidate or two doesn't now see the future, right? And not simply because they haven't got that job, but then they say, well, it's probably will I wait 3 years? Will I wait for them to fall over? Will I wait for 6 years? No, I won't. I need to take my chances elsewhere, right? Yeah. That's just a normal part of the journey. You know?
I know that we're running short of time now, so I'm going to just ask you one final question to wrap up. From your extensive experience in governance, what's the best advice you would give to a new director stepping onto your board?
Right, so it's in a couple of bits, right? You have a voice, right? And you do have a voice, right? So it doesn't mean that you sit there for the first 12 months and say nothing. However, you must read all the papers, understand all the papers, and then ask questions, right? And ask questions that you actually need clarification. You don't need to feel like you need to speak on everything, which is a tendency for some new directors to think, right, well, say they know I'm here, I better ask questions, all this sort of stuff. Don't do that. And the less you do that, the more you'll be valued, because, Billy Smith is talking about this, we better listen because they've read the material, they've got this issue, right? Also, no question by a new director is a dumb question, right? So hopefully the chair allows you, and doesn't embarrass you and doesn't belittle you if it is a dumb question, because I think the dumb question sometimes opens up another question. So, so it's pretty straightforward. Read the material, be respectful of your other directors as well, but you're not subordinate. You are now equal, right? Just because you're the new boy or girl, you are equal to them, right? And you should express your view. But also, if it's your first directorship, as in for your 27th, you are a director, you're not management.
Get your head out of the detail. Yeah, so prepare for all of the board meetings, ask the questions, don't be afraid that they're silly questions. Don't feel like you should speak on every topic. Speak when you've got something different to say from what's already been said in the room, or when you've got something you need clarification on. Great. Joe, thank you so much for your time. I know you're only in the country for a couple of days, and I really appreciate you spending time with me. So hopefully we can catch up again next time you're in the country.
Yeah.
And I'll look forward to seeing you next episode. Thank you for watching this episode of Governance Bites. We have more episodes on YouTube and your favourite podcast channel, where I interview directors and experts on various topics relating to boards of directors and governance. We'd love to see you back, and please like, subscribe, and share the videos and podcasts.